Good morning. When was the last time you read the book of Job? I have to be honest, it's been a while. But I've completed this book called Disappointment with God, which really kind of covers the book of Job. There's this wager that happens at the very beginning where Satan just pretty much comes to God. And I don't know exactly how that happens. And I remember this guy, Brendan Osgood, like if Satan comes before God, do they have to come in afterwards and sanitize and everything just after the slimy entity that he is? But he comes and he says, God's kind of bragging on Job. He's like, Job's a really good guy. And Satan's just like, yeah, well, you bless him. You give him everything he could possibly want. God's like, no, he loves me because he loves me, not because I'm bribing him. Satan says, oh yeah? Yeah, well, you let me, and God says, okay, but don't touch him. And Satan does. Satan just wreaks havoc. I mean, kills family members and all kinds, except his wife who comes along and says, don't you think it's time to curse God and die? Thank you, Mrs. Job. I really needed that today. But it's really bad. And then God comes back and says, see, he said, naked I came into the world, naked I leave, blessed be the name of the Lord. Later, Job would say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. But Job says, or Satan says to God, it's like, yeah, well, it's skin for skin. I mean, you let me touch him. Oh, it'll be a different story. And so he does, and he's got these boils all over his body. But still, he doesn't sin against God. But then for, I don't know, like 30 chapters, he's got all these friends that are coming to try to encourage him. And they try to tell him, obviously, God is good. Bad things happen to you, so you must be bad. And Job's like, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I didn't do anything to deserve this. And they go back and forth. And it's poetic, and it just deals with human suffering, and it's a profound book. I think there's just a lot of really good stuff to it. And you know what? God can handle our complaints. The complaint department's always open. Read the book of Psalms. God would rather you openly complain to him than quietly just keep it all to yourself. I'm convinced of that. Having read through the Bible cover to cover many times, I am convinced God would rather hear your complaints, because in the process of doing that, we kind of work through it. So at the end of the book, Job doesn't get his questions really answered. He didn't understand that there was this wager. We understood that. And may I suggest to you, there's all sorts of things happening in the spiritual world that we're not really aware of. Yeah, I really think that's true. So at the end, God shows up and he's like, okay, take it like a man, Job. Where were you when I was hanging the stars in the sky? Where were you when I was laying the foundation of the world? Where were you when I was determining how far the oceans would go and no further? Where were you when I was hanging the sun up, when I was creating all these animals and just figuring out how animals were going to reproduce? I mean, he just lays them out with all these different things. Where were you when I was doing all of that? And I like what Philip Yancey comes up with. He says, at the end, when Job heard the voice from the whirlwind, he finally attained that kind of faith. He said God reeled off natural phenomena, like I was just saying, the solar system, constellations, thunderstorms, wild animals, that Job could not begin to explain. And if you cannot comprehend the visible world you live in, how dare you expect to comprehend a world you cannot even see? Wow. Isn't that the case? Job repented in dust, and he's like, I never should have opened my mouth. But God doesn't say he shouldn't have. What he's saying to him is that how can we possibly think we're going to understand everything when what's right in front of us, we don't understand how it came to be. Late one night, Nicodemus came to Jesus, and he's asking him and all kinds of questions, and Jesus is like, you got to be born again. He's like, scratching his head, how do I go back inside my mom? And Jesus is like, no, that's not what I meant, dude. But I like what Jesus says to him. He says, if I have spoken to you of earthly things and you do not believe, how then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? No one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. Profound statement that Jesus is saying, I know what's on the eternal side. And if you want to understand something beyond this realm, you've got to come to me, because I'm the only person that was there and came to earth. But Nicodemus couldn't figure out some basic things Jesus was talking about. Job couldn't understand some things of earth. If we want wisdom, we need to turn to the one who has it. Turn to God, ask him for wisdom. James chapter 1, verse 5. If you ask God for wisdom, he will give it to you. He won't scold you. He'll give you the wisdom you ask for. Have a great day.